It started with hushed murmurs in the corridors of Kensington Palace, an unease that even seasoned courtiers couldn't ignore. But what began as whispers quickly escalated into a scandal so vast it shook the monarchy's very foundation. As evidence of Camilla's betrayal emerged, all eyes turned to Catherine and the throne inheritance documents that would rewrite royal destiny forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. No one inside the palace could have imagined the quiet unease that had begun to swirl would soon turn into a thunderstorm of royal reckoning. It started with small details, missing files, signatures that didn't match, and unexplained alterations in documents that were supposed to be sealed under the Queen's name. Rumours about Queen Camilla's forged inheritance papers began spreading through Clarence House like wildfire, whispered between aides too frightened to speak publicly. Within days, the air inside Buckingham Palace grew colder. Officials avoided eye contact, phones were confiscated, and staff were warned not to speak about internal matters. But the truth was already seeping through the cracks, and it was far too big to contain. Behind the glittering facade of royal unity, an invisible war had begun. A leak within Clarence House hinted that key succession documents, those defining the future of the monarchy, had been deliberately altered after the Queen's passing. A single phrase, removed and rewritten, had the power to change the line of inheritance. And at the centre of that dark manipulation stood Camilla's name. One of them was Princess Anne, whose silence had always been mistaken for loyalty. When she discovered discrepancies in the Queen's final instructions, she made a choice that would change royal history. She would not let deceit define the monarchy. Her mother built. One cold evening, as Catherine sat in her private study, a discreet knock echoed through the room. An envelope, plain but sealed with a wax insignia of Anne's crest, was handed to her without a word. Inside were pages she didn't recognize, pages connected to the inheritance documents the palace believed had been finalized years ago. The moment Catherine read them, her breath caught. The dates didn't align. The signatures bore differences, and one sentence, curiously missing from the official copy, confirmed her worst suspicion. The inheritance had been redirected without royal consent. The emotional weight of what she held was unbearable. Between loyalty to her husband and duty to the truth, Catherine stood at the precipice of a decision that could either save or shatter the monarchy. William noticed her growing silence, her sleepless nights, the way she stared at the fire without speaking. Behind closed doors, the tension between father and son deepened. Charles defended Camilla's honour, but William could no longer ignore the mounting evidence. Every word between them now carried centuries of burden, and Catherine, caught between them, realized the crown's integrity depended on her courage. Outside the palace gates, the media had begun to circle. Reporters spoke in riddles, hinting at a royal fraud and a hidden trail that could topple reputations. The world watched with breathless fascination, unaware that inside those ancient walls, the woman who had once been the quiet duchess was preparing to confront the empire itself. Catherine's calm exterior concealed a storm no one saw coming, a storm that would tear through royal lies and expose the truth behind the throne. But as Catherine held the sealed file in her trembling hands, she realized this wasn't just about titles. It was about restoring a legacy that had been stolen in plain sight. For years, Camilla's inner circle operated in the shadows, pulling strings, erasing traces and manipulating paperwork. But a single mistake triggered a domino effect, exposing a secret network of deceit that had tampered with the very core of royal succession. It began not with a royal confession or a press leak, but with a misfiled ledger during a routine audit. The Crown Estate, in its annual compliance check, stumbled upon inconsistencies in inheritance allocations. What should have been a straightforward record of royal transitions was riddled with crossed-out clauses, unusual timestamps, and unexplained amendments. One name appeared repeatedly: Camilla's senior aide, Olivia Rawdon, a woman known for her discretion, loyalty, and unyielding control over palace documentation. But beneath her polished exterior, Olivia had been orchestrating a quiet restructuring of power that went far beyond her role. Her signature was found on a document dated just days after Queen Elizabeth's passing, a document supposedly locked away with the Queen's final decree. The forgery was almost perfect, almost. A microscopic variation in the Queen's monogram seal gave it away. Once questioned, Olivia panicked, and under pressure from legal advisors, quietly resigned before the scandal erupted. But by then, it was too late. The damage had already begun to ripple through the monarchy like a crack through glass. Within hours of the discovery, Princess Anne ordered a re-examination of the Queen's throne succession file, stored in a secure wing of the royal archives. And what they found sent shockwaves through the royal core. 3 crucial pages missing since the Queen's final days were miraculously recovered, tucked deep within a private storage drawer, never logged, never declared. The Queen's handwriting was unmistakable, her intent crystal clear. The original succession documents had been altered after her death, and someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury that truth. While the palace desperately tried to contain the situation, another blow struck from within. A long-time staffer, one of the Queen's former footmen, anonymously sent an envelope to Catherine's residence. Inside was a confidential memo detailing the removal of the original files and an unsigned note. "What they've done dishonors her memory. You must act." It wasn't just evidence. It was a call to arms. Catherine, still reeling from what she had uncovered with Anne, now held undeniable proof of an orchestrated betrayal. She didn't weep. She didn't falter. She got to work, quietly, strategically, and while she gathered her allies behind closed doors, Charles was left exposed. The king, blindsided by the revelation, couldn't comprehend how his own household had deceived him. He had trusted Camilla's team implicitly, never imagining they would tamper with his mother's final decree. But trust is a fragile thing in the palace. And now, that trust had shattered. Ministers began pulling back. Royal correspondents issued cautious statements. Even Camilla's oldest allies, those who once championed her rise, began to distance themselves, issuing vague denials or stepping down from royal advisory boards. The machinery of royal manipulation had broken down in full public view, and just as the cracks in Camilla's facade began to show, Catherine made her move, and this time she had the crown's silent blessing. In a locked drawer, hidden away like a time capsule of royal truth, Catherine discovered a letter from Queen Elizabeth herself, one that held not just affection, but royal instruction. This was no ordinary note. It was a dying monarch's last shield for the future queen. The day began without warning, but not without purpose. After days of silence and shared glances, Princess Anne summoned Catherine to a quiet corridor. Few dared enter a private study, untouched since the Queen's passing. The room carried weight, history, memory, but it was the desk, a relic of Elizabeth's reign, that held what Catherine never expected to find. Inside the drawer, carefully placed beneath velvet lining, rested a folded letter addressed in the Queen's unmistakable handwriting. To Catherine, in trust. With trembling hands, she opened it, and within moments, her world changed forever. The words on the page were gentle, but decisive. Queen Elizabeth spoke not just as a grandmother-in-law, but as a sovereign passing her torch. She praised Catherine's unwavering strength, her dignity under pressure, and her silence in the face of storms. The letter acknowledged years of quiet observation, watching Catherine bear the weight of royal duty without complaint, preserving tradition while nurturing change. But then came the moment that tore open the palace's deepest wound. The Queen confessed fear not of death, but of deception. She wrote of her growing concern in her final months that certain royal documents might be reshaped after her passing. "If you are reading this," she wrote, "then what I feared has already begun." The letter made reference to sealed documents stored under Anne's watch, meant to be opened only if the line of succession was ever manipulated. It was not paranoia, it was foresight, and in that same breath, Elizabeth spoke of Diana, of how her son's choices had reopened old wounds, and how Catherine had, without ever trying, begun to heal them. She described Catherine as the bridge between the old and the new, and stated, in no uncertain terms, that the monarchy's future depended on her not merely as a consort, but as a pillar of moral authority. "Diana had courage," the Queen wrote, "but you have both courage and restraint, and that is what the crown will need when I am gone." The weight of it broke Catherine, not because she was unprepared, but because it confirmed everything she had feared and everything she had suspected was true. Camilla's reach had gone too far, and the Queen had seen it coming. Alone in the study, her hands still wrapped around the letter, Catherine cried not out of weakness, but out of fury held too long beneath the surface. When the tears dried, resolve took their place. This wasn't just about inheritance or protocol anymore. This was about honoring a queen who had trusted her beyond bloodlines or birthrights. Catherine wasn't stepping into power. She was defending it. She left the room with her head high and the letter close to her chest. The time for hesitation was over. The public didn't know the truth yet, but they would. And when they did, it wouldn't just be Camilla's influence on the line. It would be the integrity of the entire monarchy. With royal ink in her hand and centuries of tradition at her back, Catherine knew what must come next, the royal courtroom of public opinion. Few ever gain access to the vault beneath St. James's Palace. But when Princess Anne arranged for a royal order to open it, what lay inside changed everything. Sealed decrees, wills, and inheritance documents untouched for decades finally saw the light of day. It was a moment that could only be described as sacred, yet laced with tensions so thick it nearly suffocated everyone present. Catherine, flanked by Princess Anne and a trusted circle of royal legal advisors, stepped into the most secure chamber in the monarchy's inner sanctum. The royal vault wasn't just a place for archives. It was where truth had been buried intentionally, quietly, and almost permanently. The Queen's private paperwork, protected under a rare sovereign order, had remained sealed since 2022. Only a few had access. None had dared reopen it until now. As the heavy door creaked open and decades of silence fell away, what they found confirmed every fear, every whisper, every unanswered question that had haunted the palace since the Queen's passing. At the heart of the sealed chest were the original succession documents. No edits, no forgeries, no mysterious alterations. And in Her Majesty's unmistakably handwriting, one clause stood out, directing that William and Catherine were to inherit not only the ceremonial roles, but a greater share of constitutional authority, sooner than tradition may dictate. It was bold, radical, a break from royal precedent. But more than anything, it was clear. Elizabeth had chosen her path, and she had committed it to paper long before the illness that eventually claimed her reign. A supplementary note signed and dated outlined her intention to empower Catherine as the stabilizing force of a modern monarchy, while carefully reducing the influence of those not born of Windsor blood, a line few could read without acknowledging Camilla. What made this discovery explosive wasn't just the Queen's intent, it was how vastly it differed from the version Camilla's team had been pushing since the Queen's funeral. Camilla's version painted her as the bridge, the matriarch, the steady hand. But now, that narrative began to collapse. Catherine's hands trembled as she read the Queen's directives, not because she wanted the power, but because someone had worked so hard to steal it from her. A royal notary was summoned immediately. The signatures were verified. The seals were unbroken. Every document inside the vault was declared authentic and untouched. There was no question now. The real plans had been hidden, and what Camilla had promoted to the public and the press was a carefully curated lie. The Crown Estate trustees, upon being briefed, called an emergency meeting. This wasn't just an internal dispute, it was a constitutional crisis cloaked in betrayal. The original succession order, still legally binding and now authenticated, placed William and Catherine on a fast track toward formal authority. It stripped away the illusion of Camilla's permanence and repositioned Catherine as the Queen in waiting with full blessing from the last sovereign. For Catherine, it wasn't a victory. It was vindication, years of quiet dignity, of being sidelined, overshadowed, underestimated. It had all led to this moment. The truth wasn't just discovered, it had survived. And just as the truth clawed its way out of the vault, Camilla launched a final, desperate maneuver to silence it all. Cornered and exposed, Camilla refused to fall quietly. With palace lawyers, loyalists, and tabloid mouthpieces at her side, she initiated a last-ditch offensive, one that weaponized history, scandal, and personal vendettas against Catherine. The revelations from the vault had shattered the illusion of stability Camilla had so carefully built. For years, she had thrived behind polished smiles and choreographed appearances, confident that her influence was untouchable. But now, every whispered secret and carefully crafted lie had turned into evidence against her. Still, surrender was never in her nature. Within hours of the document's verification, Camilla's legal team began drafting a poignant counter-narrative, an attempt to discredit not just the findings, but the very people behind them. They argued that the vault's opening had been procedurally irregular, and that the Queen's original decrees had been misinterpreted by interested parties. The language was strategic, precise, and cold, designed to cast doubt on Catherine's integrity without ever naming her directly. Behind the walls of Clarence House, however, Camilla's retaliation became personal. Her aides began leaking selective information to sympathetic journalists, framing Catherine as calculating and ambitious, insinuating that she had manipulated her growing public popularity to corner the crown. Private messages, some years old, taken out of context, appeared across gossip columns, each one aimed at painting Catherine as the silent schemer beneath the crown's golden surface. The strategy was cruel but familiar. When Camilla couldn't erase the truth, she tried to poison it. One of the most cutting blows came when Camilla's circle began accusing Catherine of using Princess Diana's legacy for political gain. They claimed that invoking Diana's name during royal engagements was a manipulative attempt to sway public sympathy. It was a deliberate move, one meant to reopen wounds William had spent decades trying to heal. For Catherine, it was beyond betrayal. It was a desecration. Yet she didn't respond with anger or public confrontation. She stayed silent, her silence louder than any denial could be. And for the first time, William stepped forward not as a prince, but as a husband. At a charity gala, when asked about the allegations, he looked directly into the cameras and simply said, "Some legacies don't need defending. The truth defends itself." It was the most public act of protection he had ever given Catherine, and it changed everything. The statement sent shockwaves through the establishment. Princess Anne, whose words carried weight, precisely because they were rare, issued her own carefully worded response days later. The Queen's intent was written, sealed, and witnessed. She said, in a tone that brooked no argument, "Speculation cannot rewrite that." Her message was clear. She stood with Catherine. And with that, the once unified royal household began to fracture. Courtiers whispered of an invisible line dividing the monarchy. Those who stood behind Catherine's quiet strength, and those who still clung to Camilla's dwindling shadow. The tabloids called it a royal civil war, but it was far deeper than that. It was a reckoning between truth and manipulation, legacy and deception. Camilla's attacks had unleashed chaos, but in doing so, she had revealed her desperation to the world. Public opinion shifted swiftly, decisively, and without mercy. The same press that once praised her resilience now dissected her every move, sensing weakness where once there was control. But even as Camilla fought, tooth and nail, the tide had turned, and the people had already chosen their queen. When Catherine stepped out wearing Diana's sapphire brooch, the message was clear: she was the people's queen. Overnight, social media exploded. Public polls, news panels, and palace watchers all aligned behind one truth: the throne belonged to Catherine. It was a moment calculated not for spectacle, but for symbolism. After weeks of relentless attacks, scandalous headlines, and institutional silence, Catherine made her first public appearance not behind palace gates, but at a children's hospital charity event. Her arrival sent a shockwave across every screen in Britain. The brooch, once worn by Diana during her most defining public moments, rested delicately on Catherine's chest, and with it came a silent declaration. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't hiding. She was stepping forward with the quiet confidence of someone who had endured the storm and emerged unshaken. Within minutes, the gesture was trending across every major platform. Hashtags erupted. Number Catherine the Rightful, number Diana Lives On, number Our Future Queen. The digital chorus was deafening. What began as a burst of online admiration rapidly transformed into something bigger. Across cities and towns, supporters began organizing public gatherings, candlelight vigils, and rallies calling for transparency and accountability within the royal institution. In London, a crowd amassed outside Kensington Palace, holding banners that read, "Elizabeth chose her, so do we." Newspapers that had once cautiously straddled royal neutrality began publishing editorials openly challenging the legitimacy of the altered inheritance narrative. The Times called it a constitutional insult. The Guardian labelled it a historic betrayal of the Queen's will. Even the Daily Mail, long known for its loyalty to the firm, published a rare front-page endorsement of Catherine as the rightful future Queen. Behind closed doors, Parliament could no longer ignore the groundswell of public fury. Although no official statement was made, senior members acknowledged the document discrepancies uncovered in the vault, and conversations began circulating around legal review. For the monarchy, this was uncharted territory. Never before had the people turned so decisively in one direction, demanding not just loyalty to tradition, but justice for the truth that had been buried. Catherine had not asked for this fight. But by simply standing in grace, she had won it. Her restraint had become her weapon, her silence a shield against the chaos Camilla had unleashed. Perhaps most telling of all was the reaction from the institutions closest to the monarchy itself. Several royal charities, once firmly aligned with Camilla's initiatives, quietly released public statements, reaffirming their loyalty to Catherine's vision of leadership. Patronages shifted their allegiance. One by one, the pillars that once supported the alternative narrative began to crumble, and in their place, Catherine's image rose not just as a duchess or a consort, but as a sovereign in waiting. The public no longer needed a decree to see what had been made clear. She had earned the crown, not by claiming it but by proving it belonged to her all along. Yet for this chapter of royal betrayal to end, the monarchy had to do the unthinkable call for a formal royal tribunal. Behind the closed doors of Windsor, a secret tribunal of royals, legal experts, and constitutional advisors gathered not just to restore truth, but to decide the future of the monarchy itself. One ruling could erase Camilla's legacy, or crown Catherine forever. The pressure was no longer just internal. Parliament had demanded clarification. The press was unrelenting. The public had made their choice clear. And so, under mounting scrutiny and centuries of silence breaking apart at the seams, the Crown had no option but to summon what had not been called for in decades, a royal tribunal. Not merely ceremonial, this proceeding held the weight of constitutional consequence. The question on the table was unprecedented. Had the line of succession been deliberately manipulated after the Queen's death? And if so, who now held the rightful claim to inherit her legacy? King Charles, torn between loyalty and leadership, chose silence. He neither objected nor endorsed. He watched, observed. His voice, once the most decisive in the monarchy, became the quietest in the room. Princess Anne and Prince Edward, however, did not hesitate. With decades of service and their mother's legacy still burning in their veins, they stood firmly behind the documents recovered from the royal vault. Anne, unshakable in her resolve, reminded the tribunal that she had been entrusted with the Queen's sealed orders and had honoured them exactly as written. Edward, usually reserved, delivered a rare and powerful statement affirming the praetorate authenticity of both the Queen's letter to Catherine and the succession decrees stored under lock and seal. Camilla, predictably, did not attend. Instead, her presence came in the form of a polished legal team, sharp-tongued barristers, armed with procedural arguments and ambiguous interpretations. They argued that the vault documents, while authentic, were never intended as legally binding and should be viewed through the lens of evolving royal strategy. It was a desperate attempt to obscure what had already become clear, but the silence on Camilla's part spoke louder than any defense. She had nothing new to offer, no counter-evidence, no personal testimony, not even a written statement. And then came Catherine. Her voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of a monarchy tested by fire. She presented the vault documents, the verified signature of Queen Elizabeth, the sealed succession plan that had been hidden from the public, and most devastating of all, personal letter from the Queen herself. The tribunal sat in silence as she read aloud the closing lines. The monarchy must not be preserved by deception. It must be defended by truth, no matter how late it arrives. The room fell still. Even the most seasoned advisors had no rebuttal. When the judgment was finally delivered, it came with a clarity that echoed across every stone corridor of Windsor Castle. The tribunal declared the altered documents promoted by Camilla's circle to be fraudulent. The originals preserved in the vault, protected by Anne, and verified by multiple officials were upheld as the Queen's final and binding intent. And in them, Catherine was named not simply as consort, but as the rightful inheritor of Queen Elizabeth's wishes and trust. The tribunal's decision didn't just settle a legal matter, it redrew the lines of royal legitimacy. As gavel met marble and the verdict echoed through the palace halls, one final revelation remained buried deep in the Queen's personal diary. It was Queen Elizabeth's final journal entry just days before her passing that sealed Catherine's place in history. In ink faded by time but clear in intent, Her Majesty left no doubt. Catherine wasn't just her granddaughter-in-law, she was her chosen successor. The tribunal had spoken, the nation had rallied, and the documents recovered from the vault had rewritten the narrative Camilla tried to claim. But just when it seemed the final word had been spoken, Princess Anne returned with one last piece of evidence, one she had guarded not as a royal, but as a daughter. In the quiet aftermath of the ruling, Anne approached Catherine privately and placed in her hands a single page, delicately preserved from the Queen's personal diary. It was not part of the official record, nor had it ever been seen by legal advisors or members of court. It was personal, raw, undeniably real. The entry, dated mere days before the Queen's final breath, began with a phrase that stung with haunting clarity. "There is unfinished business." What followed was a reflection that read more like a farewell than a journal note. Queen Elizabeth wrote of her mounting concern that her wishes so carefully penned, sealed, and delivered would not survive the politics of those left behind. She spoke of factions growing too bold, of history being rewritten before her ink had even dried. But she ended the entry not in fear, but in absolute certainty. "Let it be, Catherine," she wrote. "She will hold this family together. She carries the memory of duty without bitterness and the soul of Diana without spectacle. She is not our past. She is the one thing that still offers us a future." Catherine didn't speak when she read the final line. She didn't have to. William, seated beside her, lowered his head, not out of grief, but out of reverence. For years, they had carried the weight of the crown's expectations without knowing whether they had the Queen's full blessing. And now, in her own words, it had been given not in public, not for show, but in the quiet, sacred place where truth is kept. A wave of emotion overtook them both, and for a moment, the noise of the scandal, the tribunal, and the nation fell away. All that remained was legacy, raw, undiluted, and finally, fully passed down. Later that evening, the palace released a rare statement, not from aides or press secretaries, but from King Charles himself. It was brief, only 4 sentences, but its meaning was clear. He acknowledged that the Queen's original succession plans had been misinterpreted, and confirmed that her personal writings and formal documents now aligned. He stopped short of apologizing, but in those few, carefully measured words, he stepped out of the shadows and affirmed what the public already knew. The Queen had never intended Camilla to hold the crown. Her heart and her monarchy belonged to Catherine. But before the crown could shift hands and the people could rejoice, Camilla vanished and left behind a letter that would send new shockwaves. Camilla was gone. Her royal quarters emptied. Her staff dismissed. But the letter she left behind wasn't one of bitterness, it was a final admission. one that paved the way for Catherine to rise not just as queen consort, but as the true matriarch of a fractured monarchy. Her departure was swift, without ceremony or explanation. One morning, palace aides arrived to find her rooms stripped of personal belongings. No statements, no press briefings, just silence and absence. Camilla had retreated to Ray Mill House, the private Wiltshire residence she had once used as a sanctuary from the public eye. But this time, she wasn't hiding. She was surrendering. For all the legal deflection, all the public manipulation, all the silent resistance, this exit was her quiet confession. And the only thing she left behind was a handwritten letter, addressed not to the press, nor to Charles, but to Catherine. In the letter, Camilla didn't beg for sympathy, nor did she offer excuses. Instead, she acknowledged the truth she had fought so long to suppress. She admitted that she had altered the Queen's original documents not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of being pushed aside again. Fear of disappearing into history as nothing more than a footnote to Charles's reign. "I thought I was securing a place for myself," she wrote, "but I see now I was only stealing time that was never mine to begin with." She concluded with a simple but piercing line, "I hope one day you'll understand that even queens can be afraid." The letter, though never publicly released, reached King Charles within hours, and for the first time since the scandal broke, he acted decisively. Camilla's remaining allies were removed from advisory roles. Her influence on future succession discussions was formally revoked. A new decree was issued, clearing the path for what had long been Queen Elizabeth's unspoken vision. The crown could no longer be manipulated by politics or fear, it would now be guided by truth. Days later, in a ceremony that was understated yet profoundly symbolic, Catherine formally received the royal inheritance documents that had once been hidden away in the vault. The Queen's letter, the tribunal's ruling, the vault-sealed decrees, all handed to her in full public view, with the nation watching and the monarchy standing behind her. No golden crown was placed on her head, no orchestra played. But in that moment, she became something far more powerful than a title. She became the embodiment of resilience, of duty, of quiet strength, the very foundation the monarchy now needed to survive the storms ahead. The public celebrated not with cheers, but with a collective exhale. After months of upheaval, justice had prevailed, not through scandal, not through vengeance, but through patience, perseverance, and the unshakable dignity of a woman who never asked to rule, yet was destined to. Across editorials, broadcasts, and private conversations, one phrase echoed over and over again, Queen Catherine. And with tears in her eyes and the weight of history on her shoulders, Catherine looked to the sky not for approval, but for peace. Knowing Diana and the Queen were finally heard. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.